Hello, and welcome to the newest webinar in our Radiation Safety and Wellness webinar series, Radiation Surveys and Instrumentation. My guest today is Franz Dambo. Franz is the Director of Radiological Protection Services at Nuvia, an international company involved with major nuclear projects. Nuvia is a designer and supplier of sophisticated radiation protection and detection instruments. We are happy to have him here with us today to share his expertise and give us a demonstration. The final 20 minutes of today's webinar will be a movement break led by Charmaine Wong of Ji Hong Tai Chi and Qigong in Richmond Hill, Ontario. We thank Charmaine for being here with us again today. Let's take a moment to go over the functionality of the Zoom meeting. We ask that during the presentation portion that the audio and video be from the presenters only. We have found that although you can access the audio through the computer or telephone, the quality of sound tends to be better when listening from a computer. There's a chat feature where people can discuss. If you have questions arriving from the content, please type them into the Zoom Q&A. The Q&A area is set up to allow attendees to upvote and comment on questions. As the webinar is only 40 minutes in length and is immediately followed by our wellness, time may not permit for us to answer them during the webinar. The answers will be posted on our website along with a link to the video recording and a copy of the slides. This can be found under Education Webinars. I will be sending a confirmation of attendance email after the webinar and will include a link to that page with the communication. I will also include the topics covered and the length of time spent in the webinar, as some people have requested this to send to their professional association. Lastly, I have automatic closed captioning enabled in the slide presentation. If they're being blocked by your Zoom controls, you should be able to select a different way to view the webinar in Zoom, which makes them easier to see. Today, we'll be discussing radiation surveys and survey instrumentation. We will start with a short background on the radiation surveys and instrumentation. Our guest, Franz Dambo, will then give a demonstration, giving a general explanation of the most common types of survey instruments, including an explanation of direct and indirect methods and the difference between dose and dose rate. He will also explain basic checks to be done with survey meters and differences in types of radiation surveys. After the presentation and demonstration portions, Franz will take questions from those in attendance. Humans have no senses to detect ionizing radiation. For more information on ionizing radiation, please see our previous webinars, mainly Understanding Radiation, Health Effects of Exposure to Radiation, and Uses of Radiation. In order to estimate the amount of energy being deposited by the radiation and the related biological effects, known as dose, we must rely on instrumentation. There are two main categories of radiation detection instruments: dosimeters and survey instruments. Dosimeters are integrating devices. They collect a total dose experienced over a period of time. They are typically worn by workers who are at risk of receiving doses over a certain level. Survey instruments, on the other hand, measure dose or exposure rates. Often they are handheld devices, but come in a variety of formats. Some survey instruments can record dose in addition to rates, and some are specialized to detect contamination. A radiation or radiological survey is an evaluation of radiation hazards, typically performed by taking a systematic set of measurements using a survey meter. Surveys can look different based on the radiation hazard being monitored. Today, I am keeping my background introduction short, as our guest, Franz Dambo, is going to cover a great deal during his presentation. To let everyone know about our guest, Franz is a Director for Radiological Protection Services for Nuvia, Canada, and has a background as a radiation protection surveyor with experience from several nuclear utilities in Canada, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. Besides the various radiation protection training from these utilities and countries, Franz has taken the RSO course through the Radiation Safety Institute of Canada. Thanks for being with us here today, Franz.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If we go to the next slide.
Sure.
Yes, this is a few examples of different instruments for detecting radiation. I'm not going to spend too much time on these ones because these are very specialized and ad hoc. The range of radiation detection instruments span from anything from a very simple handheld instruments, which most of us see in the field, to all specialized, customized. And in the top left corner, you will see the GEM, which is a gamma exploration monitor for excavating soil. The middle in the top is a portal monitor, and that's for obviously vehicles coming in and off a site that they transition through. The other top, what everyone can see, is a drone that's actually as well as specialized instruments for emergency preparedness, etc. There's more and more specialized instruments coming for specialized dedications. Nuvia has a beach monitor as well, and a lot of other fun instruments that I unfortunately can't demonstrate here today. The bottom corner is a portal monitor as well, but this one is more to be able to quickly and rapidly install a mobile portal monitor. Can we go to next slide?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, I'm going to divide it up into four different groups just to make it a little bit more structured. And I'm going to start with discussing contamination meters, then it's dose and dose rate meters, spectrometry meters, and then I'm going to just make a very quick overview of some other survey methods, but I'm not going to spend too much time on the other. Okay, next slide, please. This is an example of a contamination meter. They can look very different. There are two main types of contamination meters today. It's plastic or it's gas-filled detectors. The plastic scintillators or gas-filled detectors. The purpose of them is the same. It's to detect contamination. I'm not going to spend time on how the different works because that would be a little bit too much time consumed on that, and that's covered in the RSU course amongst other material that we can provide if someone is interested in the more details afterward. What's very important to understand is what you're surveying. And typically when you do survey for contamination, you do either a loose or a fixed contamination, and a lot of times we call them direct or indirect as well. There's a different way to do it. If we say, for example, that you are monitoring for fixed contamination, then you have to do a direct method. And then you basically take the instrument towards the item you want to monitor, and then you will see a direct reading. There has a few limitations when you do direct survey, and that's the background field you can be in when you do that, because the contamination instruments will be affected by the gamma background. So if there's a high background, you can't do the direct. Many times the items of concern is more concerning when it comes to loose contamination because it has a risk to be spread. And depending what the constitution of what you have for tools or whatever you have been using in a contaminated area, most of the contamination would be deposited as loose contamination that you can wipe off. If there is some cracks, etc., in the tools you have, then you should cover them with plastic or something else beforehand to minimize the risk that you get fixed contamination that's hard to decontaminate. An indirect method consists either of you using a smear, or you can use a muslin if you comment to what they use in Canada. It's a static oily cloth that picks up the contamination very well, and then you monitor the cloth and then you determine if there was loose or not loose. They have similar in the UK called tacky rags, and a lot of power plants use smears. Smears are usually better because they're easier to quantify than the other one. The other one is more to detect the presence of loose and to give an overrepresentative value. What's very important as well when you do contamination monitoring is to determine what kind of survey are you doing. Are you doing an alpha or a beta gamma contamination survey? Because the alpha, as you probably already are aware, has less reach both in the air, but can easily be shielded as well, and it takes a longer time for the instruments to pick up alpha. So you have to be very consistent of the speed and the distance you have from your survey meter when you do the survey. We can go back into that if somebody needs more information on that, but that's very, very important to understand the difference between an alpha and a beta gamma survey. We can go to next slide. This works very similar to the contamination meters because this is a smear or wipe test counters. They can look very, very different depending how they are and where they're used. If you see the top left, you will see the Como with which is a Nuvia instrument with an add-on for a smear checker, and that makes the instrument versatile. Obviously, it has limitations with the background because, as you see, it is not a shielded. If you look on the other two more fixed or still portable instruments, they are actually shielded, so they can operate in a higher background if you need to put them close to where we are. So now everyone is obviously wondering, is this a direct or an indirect method? It's an indirect method because you're actually taking the smear off from a surface a tool you want to detect the contamination, and then you put them into the smear checker to check, and then you get a value. We can join the next one. If you worked in a power plant, you will have seen loads of different versions of article monitors. Sometimes they're called SAM, small article monitor. They can be different size, a large article monitor. This is a direct method of surveying because you're putting the items into these article monitors. There is one thing though that everyone has to be aware of, the limitations with these monitors. There are different types. Some are only set up for doing a gamma survey. Some are a contamination survey and a gamma survey, but as you see, the volume is fairly big. So depending how you put your items and where you put them, or if you have more tools that are shielding, you will get slightly different. So normally in a power plant, for example, they're only mostly used for the normal day-to-day operation of people doing the personal items, like they have a pen, they have something tool that hasn't been in a contaminated area. Normal in a power plant, anything that has been in a contaminated area needs to be dedicated, surveyed by a radiation protection personnel. We can go to the next one. This is a dose and dose rate meters, and they are there to measure the dose and dose rate. So if you go directly to the next slide, I will go into them. The difference between dose and dose rate is really simple. And I'm just going to take this. Most of you probably already know that, but just in case there's someone, I want them to follow the logic for dose and dose rate meters. Typically, the instrument we saw on the previous slide, it shows you the dose rate. It can actually be set to show the accumulated dose for the time as well, but normally use a dosimeter to register your dose. Dose is what you actually have received, and dose rate is the speed of which you receive it. You can compare it with driving a car. If you drive 60 kilometers per hour for 2 hours, you will have traveled 120 kilometers. And the same, if you've been in a radiation field of 60 microsieverts for 2 hours, you would have accumulated 120 microsieverts. We can go to the next slide. So just, oh, sorry, I did, yeah. So if you take the dose rate per hour times the time equal to dose. So that's same there. If you have 10 millisieverts per hour, and if you spend half an hour, you will receive 5 millisieverts. So that's very simple how that works. Can go to next. Sometimes you need to do a beta dose rate, and there are different versions of beta dose rate meters, but most of them function very similar. You might have seen this one that's commonly used in North America, or you might have seen the one that has a hatch on the bottom of the instruments. And that's another type of it, but it works the same, because if you have the cap off, you will see the beta and gamma combined. And that's because the plastic or the metal, whatever the cap is, with the handles, that shields the beta. So it gives a gamma effect and a beta effect. And the next one, when you put the cap on, you will only receive the gamma. So then you can easily make the subtraction, and that way you will see what's the actual beta. That's common how we use that. Okay, we can go to next. This is examples of spectrometric instruments. And these are used, sometimes you need to identify the isotopes that you are working with. And you might need to do that because you are doing a remediation project, for example, and something is fully natural in the natural background. But a normal contamination meter wouldn't necessarily be able, you wouldn't necessarily be able to use, because they might give an alarm or be over the threshold because they can't distinguish between the difference. So in order to identify the isotopes, you use spectrometric systems, and you use them in order that they see the energy range for the various isotopes, and from that it identifies the isotopes. If you look on the small one, that's a handheld one, you will see that identifies the isotope. The other one that's a little bit bigger with the tablet on top of them is actually a gamma imaging system. The background principle are the same, but they are working slightly different, because the gamma imaging system is used as well to capture images of what you're working with. So it can be used, for example, if you're draining a system, you want to see that it's flushed, or it could have been done to identify hotspots in a power plant, in a area with a lot of different pipes, so we easily visualize for people where to not go. Okay, let's go to next. I'm just going to quickly browse through this one. I'm not going to show any picture of them, but common other service are neutron, tritium, and radon services. Neutron, obviously, if you have a power plant, for example, you will have a neutron. That's basically what splits the atom and creates the energy. So you will have neutron. There are obviously some isotopes that naturally emits neutron as well. So that might be something you might come across, but even for me working in the power plant, it's very rare that I even have to do this service. I have done them, but it's not a very common. Tritium, more common if you are in a heavy water reactor. If you're in a light water reactor, it's fairly uncommon, I would say. Tritium you do either with a passive or a direct method. And it could be either where you do it passive with what they call a grab sample. And that's when you have a survey instrument that actually captures the air inside the instrument, and you take it to lower background to be able to read it out, because the instrument would react with the gamma background. The other way is to do it with a passive sample, or if you are able to set up so you can monitor it, for example, through a hose, you can do a direct reading, so you can see it. Radon normally comes up through the crust of the earth and up into a basement. Typically, you see an accumulation. For that, you normally put a radon kit and your exposure over a longer time. And radon can be very dangerous if it's too high levels, especially for people that have been smoking a lot. It can affect the lungs very bad. We can go to the next one. In order for using an instrument, you need to, not only do you need to have the appropriate instrument for the appropriate survey, but you as well need to understand that the instrument is good to use. So this is typically how we do it on the power plant. They can look different, and it can be in a form of a log sheet, or it could be normally in a power plant we put this calibration stickers on an instrument, and it will show the instrument type. It will show who calibrated it, when it was calibrated, and when the next calibration is due by. And that's in order to make sure. And then, so if you start with doing the physical check, we call them PCBS. Physical is that you check the integrity of the instrument, you check the display, you check as well all the edges. If you check a contamination instrument, for example, you check if there's puncture in the mylar. You do a light sensitivity check by holding it up to the light, etc. So it's a lot of things to think about when you do physical. And then the calibration, normally you refer to calibration sticker. Each instrument has a battery indicator. And the battery indicator you will see either on a display if it's a digital, or normally you have a battery dial on an analog instrument to see there. Then typically most places I worked in require us a daily source check as well, and that's prior to use, and that's in order to make sure that the instruments is within the range that it should be. Okay, so can go to next. And now we come into show and tell. I'm going to show you a few different instruments so you can see. This is a training instrument, so obviously this is a simulated instrument. So, but it looks the same as a traditional analog contamination meter commonly used in many places. I've seen the same type in Sweden, UK, and Canada. When you do a physical check on this one, obviously you check the display, you check the instrument, you do a cable test to make sure, because common if there's an external probe is that there might be a loose connection on the cables. So check that by wriggling it around. You pull it up towards the light source to see if there's any punctures in the mylar. So that's obviously to see if the light's sensitive, and that's something you need to do regardless if it's a gas field or a plastic scintillator. A puncture in a gas field instrument would be required to be sent back to repair, and obviously has to go back and be recalibrated, because it's a little bit sensitive for that. So on this particular instrument, you will see this. I'm not sure if you can see, but I will take away this one. There is a dial here. And the dial here is for setting the scales, but as well to put it in the battery mode, so you can see how much battery you have. Now it's on battery. So what did you see that the display went up to?
Yeah.
So this one is good to use, for example. That's the battery. Then another contamination instrument I showed in one of the slides. This is a Nuvia product. If you look on the display here, you'll see something different here from most other instruments. There are other combination instruments, but this instrument is actually able to do an alpha survey and a beta gamma survey. I did put it into dual mode for showing you, but you can actually put this one into a beta gamma separate and an alpha separate. You can choose if you want counts per second, counts per minute, or whatever becquerel. But in order to do becquerel, you obviously need to know the isotope. But it has a good library. This instrument, when it leaves the factory, it's actually set up for 27 different isotopes, which is a little bit overkill for majority of the people. But the reason why it's set up for all these 27 isotopes is because this one is used in a lot of different fields and applications. And everyone has their own need for isotopes, etc. For example, in medical, it's used for technetium-99, for example. So that's one of them. So that's contamination meters. This is a dose rate meter, measures gamma dose rate. It's handheld, and the principle here is that it's a GM tube here. And so normally you measure this way, but actually it can come slightly from side too. But always, I would recommend to always use the front, but it's actually not that sensitive direction. You just can be aware to know. So if you have something come from the side, you will get, don't necessarily get it from the front, if that's what you mean. This is another contamination, no, dose rate meter. This is as well for training that we use in our training programs. Works the same way, has a GM tubing in here. Well, this one doesn't because it's a simulated, but and works with the remote control, etc. and point sources. But it's works the same way that other one is a digital meter too. The difference when you do these digital meters is that then you will see the battery will come up when you turn on the instrument. You get a battery indicator the first time. You turn it on, it will say how much battery time you have left. Here you see a training sample of a calibration sticker. Obviously, since this is training instruments, very clear, training use only, but it's this one, you can see that I didn't change the sticker for this day because I wanted this to be a reminder that if you're out of date, you can't use it. Majority of instruments has a requirement to be calibrated on a yearly basis in Canada.
Yeah.
So then some of you wondering, okay, but what else are out there that thing? Because I need to monitor the scaffold, and unfortunately we didn't think before, so we didn't cap the ends. How do we know there's no contamination inside, etc.? Well, for that you use something like this. This is a pipe detector. And this one put some guide wheels in as well, so it's completely centered when you send it through a pipe, or there are different kinds of these ones, but is one example of a pipe detector. This particular one is developed to do with the Kumo and the Dolmo, which is these two instruments. You see on the side, the Dolmo has connection ports. You see here, the Kumo has connection port. And this is to connect what we call smart probes. By default, as soon as you connect the external probe, the instrument automatically detects what you have connected and swap over to that particular mode. They come in a range. It could be sometimes you just want a basic gamma probe. Sometimes you want like the one I showed you, which is an alpha, beta, gamma. Then sometimes you might wondering, okay, what else is there? Well, the Kumo, you saw already that the Kumo could be connected to a smear checker, for example, and turn into a very flexible smart smear checker. Yeah, it can, connecting it to this one, and it will connect into, obviously you take away the protective cap when you put it in, but it connects into this one and it turns into a hand frisking station. There's another, like a lot of versatility. So when, yeah, you heard the beeping there. That's because the instrument detects when I put it in and put it out. And the reason it do that is because when you do a contamination survey for hand frisking, for example, or the smear checker, you need to have a background sample value, and that by default turns into that. So when you pick your instruments, besides first of all distincting if you need dose rate or you need a contamination survey, then you start to think, do you have other needs the same instrument can fill? If you are, for example, an RSO and you're always working very modest dose rates, you might even decide to take a combination instrument. Like this is normally a contamination instrument, but there is actually a dose rate version too. Has a GM tube in here and a survey point that we can swap over to do a dose rate. But then obviously the limitation is 20 millisieverts or 2 rem if you're in the North American mindset. It's so that's just the limitation. So obviously you don't use this in higher background than that. So that's a little bit what you should think about before selecting your instrument. And now I think I'm ready for questions.
Just quickly, Franz, for people not familiar with the concept of doing a survey, because some people here are here just at an interest in the broad topic, they may not work in it. Can you just quickly explain what a survey is and how it might be different for alpha? I know you mentioned alpha, beta, gamma being different, but if you just take 2 minutes to explain. Yeah,
definitely. If you take a contamination survey for beta gamma, for example, you take this kind of probe. You see it's a mylar here. You have to be very close. You should be about less than a centimeter, preferably, to do your survey, and no quicker than 5 centimeters per second for a beta gamma survey. When you go to alpha, and remember one thing: you can never go too slow, but you can do too quick. So normally you shouldn't go more than 2 centimeters per second for alpha, and you should be less than half a centimeter away. And that's there. You will always find that as well when you have your specific instruments. You will have some training associated with that, but that's doing that. But remember, the most important you can remember is you can never go too slow. But if you do speed frisking, it would not necessarily detect it. And that's one of the more common reasons why all the power plant put together training programs, and that's why you have the whole body monitors instead of frisking your hands and feet, for example. You stand on something because it's more accurate.
Yeah, to take the time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read out in the Q&A. If anybody's typed a question in the chat room, if they could move it over to the Q&A box, that would be appreciated. I know in the past we just used chat, but now we have the Q&A available in meetings. So then I'll make sure that I can see it. So we have a question from Francine. What recommendations would you offer when measuring RA224 alpha contamination on a surface? So radium, right? Radon's RN, yeah.
Very good question. I'm not the best to answer that isotope specific. So I will probably have to come back to you about that.
Okay, that's great. And again, second question, is there a specific meter to detect alpha?
Yes, there is several different meters, like this one is one of them, the Como. So it detects alpha. But you have to remember the difference between contamination meters and other, because this one doesn't give you the isotope. So in order to use this the most effective, you need to know your isotope. This one has a big library already inside, and you can swap over to like in a hospital that's using technetium 99, you would put it into the mode for the technetium 99, and you get there, because the instrument has taken the efficiency in account for various isotopes. So that's normal how you do it. In a power plant, for example, you do it per counts per second and count per minute in majority of cases. Some power plants I work with, they have done in becquerel, but more and more have gone away from that because they find it easier to just put the limit, because they know their isotopes as well, and they put a profile based on the instrument type. Another thing that it's important as well to know when you're doing an instrument is to look on the detector size.
Yeah, and whether or not, like with alpha, you need to have the thin window on it, whereas for gamma, that's not important, right? So
exactly, and like if you take this plastic scintillator, has a very, very thin mylar on it, and so that's in order to be able to detect the alpha and not shield it too much. So that's why you will see if you have an alpha instrument, they're obviously more sensitive than the other instrument, but so that's a bit to think about. It's to the size, but for every power plant they put a specific limit for the instruments to be used. It's much easier to compare gamma to gamma, because majority of the gamma instruments are very, very, very similar.
yes,
Because most of them are using a GM tube. While if you take contamination, you have to take account in a larger detector will detect more.
Yeah. So the next question, because we have people here that aren't just with the plants or medical, so we have people with norm, we have people with x-rays as well. So Jason is asking, do you have any resources or know where we can find resources for conducting norm surveys in the oil and gas sector, best practices, procedures? Do you, as a company, do you provide resources? Like we usually track things down for people and send them along, like the Canadian norm guidelines and such, like things like that. But is that something that if someone purchased an instrument that they would get a little bit of training on how to use it?
Yeah, we can definitely look for that. We do a lot for, especially in Europe, we actually do a lot for oil and gas. Because obviously, like with most of the norm activities, when you do oil and gas, the drill heads or other pieces can be contaminated by the accumulation.
Yeah.
So we have a facility in the UK. We have instruments as well. So everything is possible. And if I receive an email, I will guide you to the right person within our organization to help you with that, because obviously I am more orientated myself on there, but we do quite a lot of norm. It goes from everything. I don't know if you know the Olympic Park in London, for example, for the Olympics that was there. Nuvia had the contract for doing the radiation and the norm remediation there. It's been a lot of other things, like even the old luminescence, self-luminescing lights. They used radium dials, and they were not always that good in keeping it where it should be.
Right. So what we can do, Franz, is when people are looking for resources, maybe you and I can have a discussion afterwards, and I can put some links in the PDF that I put up on the website afterwards. Because the next one from Carolyn is the Institute of Spreadsheets to be used with survey meters, looking specifically for survey of hospital x-ray machines. In one of our training courses, we have, some examples. They're not, they're just rough examples. So you and I'll have a discussion about what we have available and put those up. And in terms of detecting tritium, what type of detector, that's usually something with, you have to get rid of the background, right? So I'll just let you comment on that.
Yeah, normally for tritium, you do either a grab sample or passive is the most common. There is Syntrex and Overhoff are two common instruments that tritium service. Both of them have an air dial, so there you can capture the air inside the instrument, take it out to a low background, and do a reading of what the tritium contents is. UPG, for example, uses something they call a bird cage, but that's a liquid that actually they put it in for in a passive, and then it takes in to be analyzed the actual deposits that ends up in the liquid. It's a little bit different process as well, but they used Overhoff and Syntrex, Sartrex as well. There is a little bit difference how these work and when you use these two instruments. In certain times they have direct monitoring as well on tritium, and that's normally by feeding a Tygon hose and extracting the air to an instrument that's either shielded or in a lower background.
All right, and then we'll just do one more quickly, I think, just flipping through the chat room. They weren't all in the Q&A. Anything else that is left that I'll go through it. I'll send things to Franz, I'll bring them back, and early next week we'll have the video up and that document will be ready. But just quickly for the whole group, can you explain the difference between using the fast versus slow rate setting on the GM pancake probe contamination meters?
Yeah. Normally, how some power plants might have different ways of doing it, but the normal way is that you use the fast initially to quickly detect something, and then when you want to quantify it, you turn to slow. And that's the slow takes longer time, but it gives you the inaccurate reading. So that's how you do it. You normally, if you go in and you want to see quickly do something survey, you use the fast, and then when you find your contamination, you swap it to slow to quantify it.
Okay, thanks then, Franz. I'm going to flip back over to our slide deck, just looking at the time. Let me go back here. And so hopefully everybody can see that again. It takes a few seconds to get the controls back. So I guess this slide's already over. So again, anything that's not answered, I have some resources from the Institute, and Franz has some resources. We'll gather those together based on the questions. And we we'll post that, and I send out emails to people both that attend. If you attend, it says that you attended, and I give the details of what was in the webinar. For those people that weren't able to attend, I send them a letter so they can find the material. It'll take a few days because we have to process the video, get it up on YouTube and Facebook and things like that, and track down the materials. So that'll be sometime next week. So I would like to thank Franz for being here with us today. And it was really enjoyable. Thanks so much. And if you'd like to know more about what Nuvia is about or check out their products, please visit nuvia.com. To contact Nuvia Canada, email info.canada@nuvia.com. For instrumentation questions, you can also click on the email icon on their nuvia-instruments.com page and use their contact form. So again, in the PDF document that we'll have up on our website, and I'll send the email out about, those will be live links, so you'll have those there later on. So we hope you enjoyed this webinar on radiation surveys and instrumentation. If you have any questions about radiation safety topics, please feel free to contact us at the Radiation Safety Institute of Canada. We have a toll-free information service to support questions from employers, workers, and the public with respect to both ionizing and non-ionizing radiation safety. We also provide radiation safety training and consulting services for those who might need support and developing a radiation protection program or related services, including doing radiation surveys. If you have any further questions about ionizing or non-ionizing radiation, please feel free to contact us toll-free at 1-800-263-5803 or by email at info@radiationsafety.ca. You can also visit us on the website at www.radiationsafety.ca or find us on Facebook. So thank you to everyone that came here today and took the time to join us. We're now going to move to our 20-minute wellness break in the form of beginner Tai Chi, led by Xiaoming Wong of Ji Hong Tai Chi and Qigong in Richmond Hill, Ontario. This school is part of the Ji Hong Tai Chi College, which was founded in 1988 and is a large organization with campuses located primarily in Canada, China, and a few other locations. The schools are all dedicated to teaching the art of Tai Chi with decades worth of accumulated experience and research to define and design a modern advanced set of teaching methods. Welcome, Charmaine. We realize that some may have to go at some point soon because their lunch is going to be over, but we appreciate people participating as you can, because sitting at a desk all day isn't necessarily healthy, and this is one way to get some stretches in before going back to work. So Charmaine, I'm going to turn it over to you. Okay. So there you are. Let me shut this off. And I have to share your sound as well, right?
Right, that's right.
I have to find it.
Okay.
All right,
No
I think
problem.
it's way at the bottom of my list. There you are.
All right.
Okay. Okay. So again, I'm going to turn it over to Charmaine, and we'll go from there.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I'm happy to be back here. Just a quick note, like for those of you who weren't here the first time, this is not the Tai Chi school. This is my own basement. So we have a physical location in Richmond Hill. So for those of you who are interested in Tai Chi, please go ahead and visit our website, or even come by for a visit, have a trial class or something like that. All right. Now, so let's get started. First of all, we're going to practice some of the things that we learned last time, and then we're going to learn something new as well. Again, get off your chairs. All right. Now, stand with a good posture and your feet shoulder width apart. Let's just do some warm-up exercises. The first one that we're going to do is going to be the same as we did last time. Have your fingers together, palms facing up in front of your waist area. And then we're just going to stretch up and do some stretching and breathing exercises. As you stretch up, turn the palms up and breathe in. And then you can relax your fingers and then sit down a bit, making sure that you're actually hinging at the hip joints, not just bending the knees. And then we repeat that again. All right. Now, last time we learned that as we stretch up, we can also turn our head to look up to our hands as you breathe in. Then you look back to the front, relax your arms and release your fingers, and you come down again. Repeat that. We want to go slow with all these movements so that you can basically calm down your stressful morning, perhaps, if you had one. And then come back down again. Let's do a couple more times. Slow movements also enhance our circulation. Make sure you are relaxed. Look up, breathe in. Look back to the front, relax, come down. One last time. Go up. Breathe in slowly and deeply. Turn back to the front. Breathe out also slowly with control. All right. Okay, now let's move on to our second exercise, which is actually one of the basics that we do for practicing Tai Chi. All right, so there are lots of Tai Chi principles there, but let's just work on how the movements look like. We learned it last time as well. All right, now feet again, shoulder width apart. Then you stretch your hands, your arms a bit sideways and a bit forward, as if in a big V shape. You bring them all the way up, turn the palms so that the palms are facing each other, fingers facing up, and then you sit down again, drawing the elbows down, and then the hands all the way down as you stand back up. Now let's repeat that. Open your arms, not entirely horizontal, but a little bit forward. Then turn the palms towards each other, fingers still facing up. Sit down, join the elbows down. And then the hands down as you go up. Repeat that. Now the arms should be relaxed yet expanding. Turn and sit down, drawing the elbows down. And back up. Let's do that 2 more times. Stretch out without locking your elbows. Stretch up with relaxed shoulders. And then sit down, drawing the elbows down. And stand back up. One last time. Expand, but relaxed. Reach up, but still relaxed. Sit down. And lower the hands all the way. Okay, so those are the warm-up exercises that we practice. And then next, we're gonna actually practice one of the Tai Chi movements that we learned in the past. Cloud hands, if you still remember how to do it. All right, we're gonna practice a few times. So if you don't remember, hopefully after a couple of repetitions, you will start to remember again. All right, now again, shoulder width apart, the feet. Let's go this way, right? So whatever you have more space on, we're gonna go sideways a few steps and back a few steps. So about 3 steps, so you wanna find the space for that. So then you sit down a little bit. Now, as we are going this way, we're gonna bring this hand up. Maybe this is your right side, all right? So you bring, your left side, so you bring your left hand up. If I act as your mirror image, then you slightly step your left foot a little bit farther apart and start to shift your weight entirely to your left side. Then we're gonna switch our hands. Bring the right hand up and bring the right foot back closer to the left foot. Then we move our weight to the right side. We switch our hands and then we continue to step to your left side. We switch our hands and then we bring the right foot back closer to the left foot. Then we move our weight to the right, switch our hands, one more step towards the left side. And then switch our hands and bring the right foot back. Now let's go back to the other side. Let's step a wider step first and move on to your right side. We switch our hands and we'll bring the left foot back. Switch our hands and step. So every time you remember, the side that you are going towards is always the side that you have your hand up. You go back to your left side, and one last time this side. Switch your hands and step to your right. Switch your hands and feet together. All right, now take a quick rest. Now, this time we're gonna place a bit more challenge on ourselves. If you haven't been, I would like you to be able to squat down a little bit more with a slightly wider stance. All right, and when we are gonna do it a little bit more slowly, all of those would be additional challenges. All right, so now we're gonna go this way. So your left side, your left hand up, sit down a bit more and then step. Go towards your left. Weight shifting with control. Switch your hands, slowly bring the other foot back, making sure that you try to place the foot down as lightly as possible. Switch your hands and step, very light, and move to your left. Switch your hands, very lightly, bring that right foot back, and move to your right. Switch your hands one more time on this side. Switch your hands very lightly. Bring your right foot back. All right, now let's move on to that side, back towards that side. So first of all, step a little bit wider with your right foot. Now when you bring your feet together, you want to leave some space between the 2 feet. Still a bit shoulder width apart. Not all the way together. Move back to your left, switch your hands, step your right foot. Switch your hands, step your left foot. One last time. Switch your hands, step your right foot. Switch your hands, bring your left foot back. Okay, now you can just rise back up and take a quick rest. All right, now we're gonna practice the second move, Tai Chi move that we did before, and that is parting the wild horse's mane. All right, now last time we learned that there is a special name for the stance that we are gonna use with this move. We're gonna call it a bow stance, right? So if you remember, a bow stance is 1 foot in front, 1 foot at the back, front toes pointing forward, back toes pointing 45 degrees with the body facing the front. All right, now let's get started. You can start with this side, maybe your left side. Turn your left toes open to 45 degrees. Your body wants to face a little bit 45 degrees to this side as well. Then we have a whole ball with your left hand on top, right hand at the bottom, as if you're holding a ball on the right side. I mean, your left side, sorry. Then you step your right heel in front. And as you move forward, you open those hands diagonally. All right, let's do that on the same side. You turn your left toes, shift your weight entirely onto this side, and a left whole ball. So the weight is on this side, so that's your hand that is the higher one, right? Left hand on top of the right hand. Then you step, and as you shift weight, you open those 2 arms diagonally. All right, let's get back and let's practice the other side. Turn your right foot 45 degrees. Now this time, your right hand is on top of your left hand as if holding a ball. Then you step forward with your left foot into a bow stance. Move your weight to the front. more weight to the front, and open your arms. Now make sure your back heel is still on the floor. That's a common mistake that beginners would have, all right? So you bring the foot back. Again, the same side, turn your right toes, right hand on top of the left hand, step, and open your arms. Now let's do that one last time. One repetition on each side, right? Okay, and then we're gonna learn something new. So turn the toes, or left toes, body, weight entirely on the left side, left whole ball. Step your right heel in front. As you move the weight, about 60% to 70% of the weight to the front leg, you open your arms. Okay, let's do that on this side, your right side. Turn the right toes, right ball, whole ball, right hand over left hand. Step your left heel forward. As you move the weight, you open those two arms diagonally. All right. Now, for this particular move, and actually for a lot of the Tai Chi movements, we don't stay in the original place. A bow stance that we were just practicing, would be the stance, the kind of footwork that would allow us to actually move forward. So what does that mean? So I'm just going to quickly show you, without the arms, how the footwork works with a bow stance. So that is what we did just now. We turned the toes, and then we step the other foot forward, right? So if we want to continue to move forward, instead of backtracking like what we did just now, you just turn the front toes, and then you move the weight entirely to that foot. And then you just pick up the foot at the back, place it in front, as the way we did just now, and then we move forward. And so on and so forth. So you turn the front toes, move the weight, and then you step forward. And you turn back. Just now, we were just backtracking a little bit, but we have already learned the mechanics of doing this move. Now, let's practice the footwork together, going forward. All right, now I'm gonna face this direction because there's more space as opposed to walking directly to the camera. You can also do that as well. You can turn sideways because that's more space for you. All right, now we're gonna turn, let's say, your right toes. You can just turn any toes, right? So, and then you step the other foot forward, right? Heel down, and then you move forward, just like what we did before. Turn back to face the front. Now we're gonna take an extra step forward. So when you sit back and turn, you sit back so that you can free up the front toes. Then you turn the front toes to the other 45 degrees. Pick up the foot at the back, put the heel down, and you move forward. Let's do one more step. Sit back a little bit so that you can free up the front toes. Turn the front toes out 45 degrees. Move the weight entirely to that foot. Place the other heel in front, and then move the weight into yet another bow step. All right, now we're gonna turn back and practice one more time. Again, turn, let's say your right toes, move the weight entirely to that foot, and place the heel of the other foot in front, and then you move the weight. Now, for those of us who like to do counting, you can count it with 5 beats, right? Sit back, that's 1. Turn the front toes, that's 2. Move the weight entirely to the front foot, that's 3. Put down another foot's heel, that's 4. Move the weight back to the front foot, that's 5. Let's do that a couple more times. Sit back, 1. Turn front toes, 2. Shift weight to the front foot, 3. Place the other heel forward, 4. shift weight, 5. One last time. Sit back, 1. Turn front toes, 2. Move weight, 3. Place the other heel forward, 4. Shift the weight, 60 to 70% of the weight to the front foot, that's 5. All right there. Now we still have a little bit of time. What we're gonna do now is to add our hands. So we were doing parting wild horse's mane just now. We were just stepping forward and backtracking. This time we're gonna go all the way, let's say 3 to 4 steps forward, and then we're gonna turn around and back, all right? But otherwise, everything else is the same. Now let's say we start on this side, and as we turn our right toes, we move our weight to the right. Now when we add the hands, we're gonna have a right pole ball, right? Your right hand is on top of the left hand, the side where your weight is. Then you step the heel forward. And then as you move forward, you do what we just did. You spread the arms for a parting wild horse's mane. Then you sit back to do 1, turn the left toes, the front toes for 2, move the weight to your front toes, that's 3. At the same time, you bring the hands to a left hold ball where your weight is. Then you put the other heel forward. And then we move the weight to do parting wild horse's mane. Again, sit back, 1, turn 2, move weight, 3. Once your weight is on the front foot, do the hold ball on that side, put the other heel forward, and shift weight and open those arms. All right, now I'm going to turn back this direction. And we can do that again. Let's start again. Let's say we start with our right foot, turn the right toes, move the weight entirely onto the right when you do a right hold ball, right hand onto the left hand. Step the left heel forward without transferring weight yet. Then as you transfer weight, you move the arms open. Sit back, 1. Turn the front toes, 2. Move the weight to the front foot, 3, as you do the hold ball on that side. Place the heel forward, that's 4. Move forward, opening your arms, that's 5. Again, sit back, 1. Turn toes, 2. Move weight, 3. And right hold ball. Step the other heel, 4. Open, 5. Let's just do 1 last time. Sit back, 1. Turn, 2. Move the weight, 3, and hold ball. Step, heel, 4. Move the weight, and 5, opening the arms. Okay, all right. I hope everybody's doing okay over there, all right? Now, we start to have a bit more of a challenge when we do all these movements, but of course, we usually would have time to practice a lot more. So if you do have time, practice at home, or otherwise we'll practice again next time when you see me again, all right? Now, before we go, we just do quickly a cool down exercise like what we did last time, all right? Just to slow down our heart rate, calm down our breaths. Turn the palms up, breathe in. Turn the palms back to yourself, breathe out. 2 more times. Breathe in. Breathe out. 1 last time. Breathe in. And breathe out. Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'll hand it back over to Lynn.
Thanks so much, Charmaine, and we really appreciate it. I think it helps reset our day and clear our minds, and we can go on with our work for the day. So we'd like to thank everyone. Yeah, no, I think it's great. Thank you to everyone for attending. I'll be ending the stream now, and just look for emails next week with the information and how to find a link back to the video and the accompanying materials. So we'll see you next time.